Hello, world. It is me, God, Johnny, and I am here to talk about a cool subject. And this subject is about the different levels of experience and the different positions that you can play in the game of life, the different characters that you can play. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to simplify it. And essentially, there's 4 stages. So, to start it off, you have boys and you have girls. We all start off as a baby, as a child. When you're a baby, you don't really even have your experience is very moment to moment. You can't really contemplate about your experience. And as you grow, you begin to be a boy and a girl. And as people grow and turn into adults, some people aren't able to break out of this stage. These will be a lot of the time people who always feel like they're victims, people who are always looking for someone else to support them, or who lack in ability to grow, people who have selfishness, an inability to see things outside of themselves. Now, a lot of people who are boys and girls will have positions in life that make them appear as though they are um, adults. They might even have high positions in life. But when you get behind the scenes and you get to know them and you look at their psychological maturity, a lot of the time these people are still boys and girls with an adult body. So the big shifts between that first level of being a boy and a girl versus being a man or a woman, which is the second level. The second level is a man or a woman. To evolve into a man or a woman from a boy or a girl, it now involves accountability. It involves self-reflection. It involves um, being honest about yourself. It involves responsibility of yourself and accountability for yourself, being able to stand in your ground mentally, physically, and spiritually, being able to have wisdom. Like, these are all aspects of adulthood, but then also it has an aspect to it as well of being responsible for others, caring for others. A lot of people hit that threshold and turn and go from that man to woman stage a lot of the time when they have children, or when they become a teacher, or when they have that job where they begin to really understand the importance of serving and helping beyond just yourself, right? So this is the transition. Those who aren't able to, or who don't have the care to contribute to others, um, you know, or who are very selfish about it or rude about it, um, they're in that boy or girl stage still. So that accountability factor, you now become a man or woman. And during this stage of being a man or woman, it's about you finding a place in the world and contributing. And it's also about you being accountable for yourself, self-understanding, self-growth, taking care of responsibilities more so. Also, a lot of people will tell you you're not a man if you don't have your stuff together, things like that. Or as a young woman, or as a woman, once you're taking care of things, once you're on top of things, once you have shown a level of credibility or knowledge in some specific area, also that is a representation of being a man or woman, because with wisdom, that means you've invested into something. That means you've um, taken accountability to have knowledge, right? Things like that. You no longer have people telling you to read or to do this assignment necessarily. You're doing it on your own. Things like that. So now you're stepping into your man and woman adult phase. And this is a very big level, because once you step into that threshold of being a man or being a woman, you begin to have an energy of more power. You have more presence. You have more firmness. You have more let me see, the word I'm looking for is you have more groundedness. You have more groundedness. Um, and that is what the boys and girls look up to. So each aspect supports one another. The men and women are responsible for the boys and girls. And the boys and girls look up to the men and women to make sure things are okay. Whether that be your child is a man or woman taking care of your child, or men and women depending on one another at work, or men and women um, working with one another, in ways as well as relationships. That's accountability. Boys and girls in relationships are just, that there's no responsibility. It's just like a flirtatious, and we're young, and it's young love. Adult men and women love is like, we got to make sure to build something now, stability together. That's the next level. And a lot of the times, some women are with boys, people that are living up on a woman. A lot of times, those men act like boys in the way they carry themselves, and vice versa. There's men who are taking care of girls, like they're depending on them for everything, no accountability, always complaining, aren't taking responsibility for their happiness. These are all aspects of a man being with a girl who hasn't turned into a woman yet. So that can play out as well. So then we have the third level. And the third level is going from the man and woman to the king or queen. Now, when I say the king or queen, it's not necessarily being like the king of Ireland or something like that, or England. It's more so about having dominion of a space. And it's about being able to control the space that men and women, adults, depend on to support themselves and the boys and girls. So now you have men and women looking up to the kings and queens, or would be your CEOs, or your managers, your entrepreneurs, your creators, the people who are in control of these big factions and projects and products in life that we all depend on. Business people who drive the economy, just high level performing people. These fall into a king and queen system now, because now you aren't just accountable for yourself and for your cohorts and for like the boys and girls. You're accountable for groups of men and women, or a group of men and women who depend on you, because if you drop the ball, now you have not a bunch of men and women and the boys and girls that depend on them all folding. So this is a bigger oversight. But with each level comes more rewards, but more responsibility. So a lot of men and a lot of women, they kind of cap out. I say most people cap out at the men and women phase. Once you start talking about king and queen level, this is a different level, because at the king and queen level, now you're dealing with having to really go beyond just being the man and woman. You have to tap into that royalty within yourself, and that pride and that dignity to want to create something or want to maintain something. You have to have that extra drive, to go beyond just being comfortable being the man and woman, being supported, playing a role in the system rather than owning a full system. By having ownership or control of something like that requires you to have a certain level of grit, of determination, and you have to see things different. At each level, also, the scope of how you view things is different. It's a different position that you're viewing things from. The boy and girl views things from everything's out here and I'm down here. The man and woman views things as, okay, there's things down here, but I got to pay attention straight ahead. And then the king and queen, they're kind of in the middle too. The man and woman, they're kind of like, take care of this, but I got to make sure this is okay so that I can stay looking forward. But then the king and queen is coming from a position of, they're looking down at everything. It's a bird's eye view. It's a top down versus a bottom up view. They're looking at the kingdom and they're saying, okay, what do we need to do to create this change? And the thing is, at each level also, you're affecting more people with the changes you make. So the boy and girl might do something and get in trouble by their mom or dad. the adults might get in trouble. They might get fired. The king and queen might get in trouble, and he gets really tough consequences because more is expected. So, this is a very high position, and with that position, amongst each position, there's levels of respect that is given. So there's a certain way you respect men and women, and in a certain way you respect boys and girls. You treat them, oh hey, men and women is, oh hey, what's going on? King and queens is like, oh hey, how are you? Nice to meet you. It's a higher level of reverence because you understand the position in life that they're holding, and you understand how hard that is, and you understand how important and valuable that is. So you have to give it its respect, and it's a different level of power now at the king and queen level. And at that king and queen level, you have to carry yourself a certain way. Okay, so the difference between each level also is the way you carry yourself. A king and queen might be gluttonous. They might be materialistic. They might be more controlling. They might be more knowledgeable of the big picture rather than the little things, because they have to look from a different view. They can't pay attention to all the details. They have to pay attention to the big picture. The king and queen position is more of an innovative position, so they can't operate under the same principles of men and women, because if they do, it's going to cut off their ability to be a king and queen correctly. So at that king and queen level, you begin to view the world, you begin to view things differently, and you begin to act from a place of more power, and you have to have more wisdom, because wisdom is all about understanding the different facets of everything. And so being a king and queen is less of a trade. You leave the trades and the technical fields and the specific fields to the men and women. When we talk about the king or queen, you're now more of a dilettante. You're dealing with different areas. It might be 8 specializations in your company, but all the specializations come to you to share their ideas. So a lot of these people who might be who might have the specialization in the details of how to do everything, they come to you and they don't expect you to know it at that level necessarily, even though kings and queens have gone through the system from boy and girl to adult to king and queen. So they know they're specialized as well, but then they must open their scope and begin to pay attention to 8 different things at one time. So now this is king or queen talk. This is a king or queen view. And kings and queens treat each other differently in the relationship dynamic than a man and woman treat themselves versus a boy and girl. So that's another thing, the way the sexes operate together as boys and girls versus adults, which is men and women, versus kings and queens. Boys and girls, it's all about playfulness. It's fun. It's more of a innocent game. It's more so experimentation. Once you hit the man and woman level, it's about obligation and duty. It's about being able to have responsibility with one another and help build one another up where trust is important. Things like trust, things like communication become more important at the man and woman level. Then at the king and queen level, it's about rulership. It's about being able to have a balance of the king operates in a way where he has to rule, he has to provide the forefront. He's on the forefront. He's dealing with the military. He's dealing with the big things that are going on, that may be considered threats that are coming or innovations. He more so pays attention to the overall goal of where everything is going. And then the queen acts as the support, the extra ear. Because she's at the same vantage point as the king. You see, that's another difference. There's a lot of men and women within a system. There's only one king and queen in that system. specific system. So there'll be a lot of kings and queens, but they all rule their own thing. And within that thing that they rule are men and women, but there's only one king and queen. So the queen is an extremely important role because the queen is the objective perceiver. She's the one that's watching what the king's doing, hearing everything that's going on, and she's like a third party. She's like the fly on the wall, but she's not a fly on the wall. She's extremely important because with that knowledge, she actually has the best viewpoint because the king can't see himself. So he needs the queen as his reflection to know if he's properly ruling. So the queen is really has the strongest vantage point in the whole system. But the king is the one in the field. He's the one talking to everybody. And then he breaks it down to the queen. The queen observes. When he's alone at night, thinking and pondering, he gives his greatest secrets, his pillow talking, the pillow talks, the secrets, the plans that nobody knows yet. Before he talks to the collective, he shares those ideas with the queen. And the queen is the one who really has the final say. The king has the final say, but the queen is the one who is influencing what the final say is a lot of the time. Even if he doesn't listen to her, if she doesn't agree with something, he's going to think twice about it. Because he'll be like, well, why does she think that? He still might act with the final word of what he's going to do. But any king that's a real powerful king was very intelligent when he chose his queen. And in most cases, the king chose a extremely intelligent queen. So it isn't some stupid girl who's just there. A lot of the time, he chose her not just for beauty and just for love. It was because he knew if he was a smart king, that she's a mastermind. And he wants her to be positioned there to hold him accountable. Because no man can hold the king accountable because then those men are below him. The king holds the men accountable. So who then holds the king accountable? You would think it's nobody, but if you look behind the scenes, it's the queen that holds the king accountable. So now we get to the level, which is the last level I'll explain, beyond the king and queen. And this is really fun that we get to talk about this next group, which is to me the pinnacle group. And this is the gods and goddesses. And so the gods and goddesses fall outside of the matrix, like they fall outside of the scope of control. From the boy and girl is controlled by the man and woman. The man and woman is controlled by the king and queen, and the king and queen is in charge of controlling everything, which in turn controls them, because they're only as powerful as the system that they rule. If that system folds, their power is gone. So as powerful as a king is, he's only as powerful as the system in which he exists. And if there's a greater system that beats him out, the king's head's going to be chopped off, and he might get mutilated even worse than the citizens, the men and women, or the boys and girls in that society. So now we talk about the gods and goddesses. They exist outside, and they operate from a place of individuality. So these are the ones that aren't really within the scope. Now, they've graduated all levels as well. That's what people don't know. You can't become a god or goddess until you've gone through the boy and girl level, the man and woman level, the king and queen level. Most gods and goddesses were king and queen of something. They either were a captain of a team, or they had something where they had leadership before. And a lot of the time, the gods and goddesses, it just played out naturally, where they were just excelling at something, or they just happened to be in charge of something. So, they have that understanding as well. A lot of the time, these people will be gifted artistic, because when we talk about art is also a sense of king or queenship. It's just you're the king or queen of your own project, which is your music or your art. So it's not as dependent in controlling people. That's another thing. So gods and goddesses don't necessarily operate from a place of control. It's more so controlling themselves and not being controlled. If you notice, the boy and girl, the man and woman, and the king and queen all thrive by some form of control, whether that means they're within a controlled system or they're controlling a system. The god and goddess is actually the opposite. They can exist within control, but they don't like it because they thrive. They naturally are chaotic, and they are able to create in chaos. So they a lot of the control suppresses their godhood and their creativity, and so they have to navigate through these control systems and and they create within them. A lot of the time, the men and women, the king and queens, view it as chaos that they create within the system that they're controlling, but that's only out of fear because they view it as chaos and they value structure because structure maintains that support system for them, the illusion of support, of order. If you notice as well, the gods and the goddesses and the boy and the girl, it's like the boy and the girl is the first level, the gods and goddesses is the fourth level. So you notice there's a dynamic with the two. The boy and the girl and the god and goddess share a similar energy. They both are the dreamers, the free spirits. One is just from a place of present ignorance, kind of. The other is from a place of extreme wisdom. And then in between is everyone else. Everyone else thrives in the control because they don't want to, they don't want to be ignorant, so that they want to be above the boy or girl. But then at the same time, they don't want to go too far outside of the grid of what they know, which cuts them off from being the god or goddess. And the beauty of the child is if you want to be extremely intelligent, you must have a mind like a child because you must be ignorant to learn more. The smartest person is he who knows that he knows nothing at all. So there is a power that the child has. There's an innovation that is birthed from the childlike spirit. And that is what the god and goddess harness. So the god and goddess operate from their own spectrum. They are actually the boy and the girl. They act like a boy or a girl. They act like an adult, like a man or a woman. They have that within them. And they have this kingship, this royalty in terms of how they carry themselves, in terms of how they don't like to be controlled. They don't like people telling them necessarily what to do. That's a level of kingship and queenship and here's a big difference as well. I explained the relationship dynamic. Well, when it comes to the relationship dynamic, gods and goddesses don't play under the same rules as those three levels underneath. You might meet a goddess and she'll be the type of girl to, let you be super chill, let you do whatever you want, not be tripping, not be calling your phone all the time or saying, oh, you got to marry me. A lot of goddesses are like, I don't even want to do none of that. I don't want to get married. I don't want to have kids. You know what I mean? A lot of gods, same way. They want their freedom. They want to be able to do what they want to do. They'll deal with a girl and they'll know, look, this is how I get down. I don't operate under those rules. I'm about freedom. So you'll notice a lot of freedom and different ways of going about love in the god and goddess world. It's more so about an energy dynamic and it's about balancing more complex relationships, And once again, to get to that level, they've went through the boy and girl lovey-dovey phase before. They've gone through the adult trying to be serious type of phase a lot of the time. And then a lot of the time they've been in a scenario where they had a king or queen scenario. And then what they've learned going through that is that ultimately they've transformed beyond it. Meaning that they've learned that in order to tap into a certain level of ecstasy within a relationship, you have to go beyond the rules that were set by the king or queen. And why? It's because the king or queen isn't the only king or queen. There's many kings or queens. And if I take on an ideology from one system and then go to another system and they do it differently, and if I can't adapt to that system, I'm limited. So the whole goal of godship, of a god or a goddess, is to go beyond limits and limitations And by creating new dynamics and making them work successfully, that's what creativity is. Creativity is going beyond a limit and then dealing with a new form of chaos, organizing that chaos, making a structure out of that chaos, and now you have a new thing that exists. If you don't go beyond what already is stable, then you won't have the ability to create. Creation isn't made from uh, doing what you're already doing. Creativity is about being unique, and it's about being spontaneous, and it's about going beyond or creating something new. So anything that we look at as normal, let's say basketball, is viewed as normal right now. But before basketball was normal, basketball was some dude throwing a ball into a peach basket. And people are like, bro, what are you doing? You know, it was nothing. But creativity said, this nothing is going to help me. If I add structure and rules to what I'm doing right now, that nobody, to this thing that nobody's done before, really, now we have something new. And that's where we transformed and created basketball. Now it's look at what it is now. It's $1 billion industry, all beginning with someone doing it differently. So gods and goddesses then are at the forefront of creativity. And a lot of the time, when they do it right, the kings and queens end up taking the creativity that the gods and goddesses created and then adding in these nuances into their society. Gods and goddesses change societies. They change cultures. The way they go about everything is meant to be different. If you're someone who doesn't do it conventional, then if you don't do things conventionally, you know where you're leaning. And with everything I explained in this, you'll kind of know where you stand and where people around you stand in this spectrum of what I explained. Who are the boys and girls? I told you this is no age either. You can be a 50-year-old boy, or you can see a boy that carries himself like a king, or even a god. Or you could see the god in the baby, or you could see the king in the man, or the queen in the girl, you see? Or you could see the girl in the goddess. So these different levels is what we're moving through. I wanted to put this out there because I just thought it was really cool to know. And pay attention to the people around you and just, yourself, and be like, I wonder where I fit on that spectrum. Us as spirits and human beings, we don't have to be boxed into one space. Sometimes the God might have to be the man for a while. He might have to be real responsible and get on his stuff. Sometimes the boy might want to be the king. Like you might have a boy that is the leader of a science project or something, and now he's in control. So we're all dabbling and moving, and that ideally you want to be able to be everything on the board. This is chess we're talking about now. You don't want to just be the pawn. You don't want to just be the knight. The whole game of chess is teaching the mind how to properly move as different characters on the board, rather than checkers where I'm black, you're red, and I'm just hopping over you, you hopping over me. That's like animals. That's like competitiveness. But chess is teaching you how to be dynamic and be many different characters on the board. You might want to be the pawn and play the checkers game where you hopping over, you beating people, but then the difference between us as humans and animals is that when an alligator finally does run into a shark, he can't transform into anything else. So he can be hopping over everybody, eating everybody, but when he meets his match, he's done. The beauty of humans and the reason why humans run society and why we actually are the top predators in the world. You think a shark is dangerous, they're not 1/30th as dangerous as a human if a human uses his mind and uses a weapon to take out the shark. Humans are so freaking predatory at the highest level, they can blow the world up 10 times over with the amount of technology we have. So that just shows you. So with that being said, what makes the human so powerful and the reason why we are at the top of the food chain is because we can be different characters. We can go in the water and swim with swimming technology. We can go ahead and fly with flight technology, and we can't be here on the ground level doing what we do. If a cheetah is chasing me, I'll just make sure I'm in my car so I can drive faster faster. And then even if it's able to keep up with me, it's gonna get tired. And my car isn't. And then I have armor on my truck, so I could probably run the tiger over and really mess him up. So this is what I'm talking about. You want to be able to move through the board. But the last thing I'll say is whichever frequency you find yourself doing 90% of the time, or 80 or more so, that's what you are dominantly in this spectrum. And everyone's goal should be to either evolve through the spectrum or just own where they're at and be the best version of themselves they can be at that position. But the last thing I'll say, and the key reason why I'm saying this, is don't judge. Understand where somebody is on the board. If you see a guy that you consider a weirdo, think for a second you might be looking at a god or a goddess. And a lot of people need to understand, just because somebody has all their stuff together and they hold this power and they have their security, that doesn't mean they're at the highest level of the game. That just means they're probably a man or a woman, or maybe a king or queen, like a baby version of the first level of king or queen. Just because somebody has stability, and you don't view that, especially for a lot of women who are looking at, oh, he don't got his stuff together, he like a boy. Okay, but how does he think? Is he different? Does he not want to be confined? Because then you might be mistaking a boy for a god, and then you chasing a man, not realizing that you just found somebody that was junior to the person you just had, if you understood what I'm explaining. And vice versa for men. So with that being said, man, yeah, last thing I'll say for men, you might be chasing some girl that's so beautiful, that's so dope, but she acts like a little girl. You know what I mean? Missing out on a goddess because you think, oh, she's too different. But you don't know what she'll do if you bring her in your life. She'll freaking make you the greatest dude ever. Or you might find a queen who's on her shit, who has the perfect vantage point to help make you a boss. And because you never got with her, you ended up just being barely at the lower man level, when she could have made you a king or helped you become a king. So understand what I'm talking about, and I hope you enjoyed this. And I got more videos coming. Like, the video is gonna just get fun now, because I'm gonna give y'all just all kinds of shit, man. So get ready. God Johnny Speaks is here. And let the God within you shine bright. Peace.